We're here in Madrid to see this, the all-new Polestar 4, and you have in fact seen it before when Elliot first reviewed it when it was launched at the Shanghai Auto Show last year. And it sits somewhere in between the Polestar 2 and the Polestar 3, arguably making this the platform 9 3/4 of the Polestar lineup. And maybe that's actually really appropriate because this is neither SUV nor coupe, it is an SUV coupe. So over the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to tell you why that warrants your attention.
Love the Fully Charged show? Join us live in Canada this September, the South in October, and Australia and London in 2025.
As an SUV coupe, which arguably, is a sort of a new category, that introduces some interesting things from a proportions and a size perspective. So first and foremost, this is wide. It is 2,139 millimeters wide, meaning that it's got this kind of very, very low and wide stance, really making sure that it's got that sort of control at the corners. It's pretty low. It's got a ground clearance of 166 millimeters and it's at about 1.5 meters high. But the thing that is the real selling point of this and the thing that they have worked most closely on is the wheelbase. It is 1 millimeter short of 3 meters in the wheelbase. And they have achieved that by absolutely pushing back the rear seats and, most importantly, getting rid of the rear windscreen. Now with a coupe, you normally get that swoopy shape that normally sacrifices the headroom that you get for your rear occupants. That has not been an option for the team looking after this Polestar 4. They've wanted to retain the amount of headroom that the rear occupants get. And so in order to do that, they have got that swoopy shape, pushed the passengers back. But in order to make that possible, they've had to get rid of the rear windscreen. When you get rid of the rear windscreen, of course, you need a camera. And that is what I'm speaking to you from right now. That is a Gentex HD camera with a really, really wide view, which is in place of a rear windscreen. I will say it takes a little bit of getting used to, but I feel like even after just a day of driving, actually, you get totally used to it. We are driving the single motor version, and there is a dual motor version which is a little bit more expensive. So this version starts at £5,990 GBP here in the UK, and the dual motor version starts at £66,990. So a bit of a price difference between those two. Now with the single motor version, that's 200 kilowatts of power. For the dual motor version, obviously that's double, that's 400 kilowatts. Now for the dual motor version, that 400 kilowatts is what makes the Polestar 4 their fastest vehicle to date. It does a 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in just 3.8 seconds. Whereas for the single motor version, it is a slightly more modest 7.1 seconds for 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. But I will say, it doesn't feel sluggish, it doesn't feel underpowered. We have been going on some proper hairpin bends, some real twisty-twiny roads, and there's been no part of me that has thought, God, I wish I could have that second motor. Couldn't we really do with that? Now, we'll say with the dual motor version, you can turn off the front motor so that it's just doing rear wheel drive to help drive that efficiency and get a little bit more range out of that 100 kilowatt hour behemoth of an NMC battery. Now, I am currently on some pretty hairy hairpin bends. And what I will say is that I'm not the sort of most proficient driver. I certainly wouldn't be recruited as a getaway driver anytime soon. And arguably I didn't nail that one. But, Polestars are all about injecting performance and fun into their vehicles. And they have such an incredible dynamics and chassis team who are really well and truly the best in the business. And we've seen that in all of the other vehicles that we've done on Polestar. And I do think that's interesting that in this electric era, it's very easy to find an electric vehicle, if you've got the budget for one, that has instant torque, they all do, that has a reasonable range, they all do, that is laced with a reasonable amount of technology, they all do. But actually the things that differentiate different EVs from another is the way that they feel. And so the tuning and the dynamics becomes ever more important. Just want to take this time to point out some of my favourite features that we have on this car. So first and foremost, you might think that it's a small thing, but I just think it's one of those beautiful, very well considered, thoughtful details. This logo, the Polestar symbol, it doesn't illuminate the whole thing. It's actually got this halo effect by illuminating just the edges. So it's just a very subtle, lovely sort of nod to the brand there. Really, really on point. Of course, we've got the smart panel there. There are 12 cameras, 12 ultrasonic sensors, there's radar, all very much gearing up towards more and more advanced levels of autonomous driving. Coefficient of drag of 0.261. There are a couple of things that my beady eyes have immediately noticed, including these air curtains at the front. Lovely swoopy shape, really pushing the wheels out to the edge. I think these are aero wheels. They are 21 inch. Ideally, of course, you know, if you want to make your driving more efficient, you do need smaller wheels and tyres. But there are 20-inch options available as well. There are frameless windows, which is rather neat, and that's all going to help reduce weight where possible, which frankly this car needs it, given it's got a whopping great big 100 kilowatt hour battery. Now you won't see it here because the key is inside, but actually these door handles sit flush. That is something that's new for the Polestar 4, certainly on the Polestar 2, those door handles protrude, but making sure that those sit flush really goes to help the aerodynamic performance as well. We've also got frameless wing mirrors, which again adds that kind of, not adding too much faff or too much material, adds that very, very sleek and elegant feel. Lovely swoopy shape, and again we've got these aero blades which will make sure the rear wake of the car is as neat as possible and reducing that drag as far as possible. Boot button there. And as you can see, we have plenty of room. Now there is a very, very important thing to mention here, because when you think there's no rear windscreen, is that okay for dogs? And thankfully yes, because you can in fact remove this panel here, so you could have a dog in the back. Very, very important for the dog owners out there. And of course it's got a 40-60 split, so they could have even more room if you wanted to. Or of course, pop them on the back seat. Right, this is nice. This is a nice movement of a charging flap. So charging flap here, it can charge from 10 to 80% in 30 minutes using 200 kilowatts DC charging. There is also the option of 22 kilowatt AC charging. Now, really, really importantly, this is bi-directional. It has bi-directional charging capability. That doesn't mean that it's V2G enabled just yet. That is all down to the connectivity protocol, ISO 15118-20. We have done a full video of that, so please go and watch that video rather than making me repeat that to you now. But certainly when there is the standard to enable V2G, these cars will be ready to go, so V2G will be totally possible. Right. So, something for the electric vehicle aficionados. This sits on the SEA platform from Geely, that is the Sustainable Experience Architecture, and actually underpins a number of different electric vehicles within the Geely group and a sort of associated brands. Sustainability really is at the core of everything that Polestar do, and in fact, when they're making engineering decisions, they're not just sort of making trade-offs on time, cost and quality, but also sustainability. So it's such a core part of the products because it factors at every single point in the decision-making process, which I think is so important, and it's kind of phenomenal that, you know, that isn't just the standard. But this, the Polestar 4, is their most sustainable vehicle yet. It has 19.9 tons of CO2 equivalent as its cradle to gate value. So that's from, you know, right from manufacture to it leaving the factory and going out into the wild. And they've done that through a number of really sensible strategies, like the factory in China is entirely powered by renewable energy. I would hope that they'd do the same thing for the factory which will produce these in South Korea, in Busan, in 2025. But whilst sustainability might be at the core, efficiency, that's where it's perhaps a little bit lacking. So at the moment, this would expect around 3.34 miles per kilowatt hour. And we are doing roughly that. In fact, now we're doing slightly under that. And of course, you know, that's an average number, so you can gamify that as soon as you're going downhill or what have you. But part of that is because it's got a whopping, great big, massive hunk of battery. It's got a 100 kilowatt hour battery, of which 94 kilowatt hours of that is usable. For the single motor version, that does give you 367 miles of WLTP range, and for the dual motor version, 385 miles of range. So really, really, really class leading. Certainly if you compare that to the Tesla Model Y, you know, it's adding a solid 40 miles more than that or so. Inside, the Polestar 4 feels quite different from the Polestar 3. From a non-plasticky dial, which I love, to slightly different material choices more generally, including 3D knitted material made from recycled plastic bottles and inspired by sportswear. Unlike the 2 and 3, the screen is in landscape. I personally prefer it, not least as it allows easy access to 4 widgets, including customising your favourite shortcuts, whilst always being able to see your maps. As we would expect, the user experience has been given excellent consideration. The buttons on screen are big, and when they're selected, they're highlighted in orange, making it extremely clear, even at just a glance, minimising distractions whilst you're driving. The graphics are all powered by the very fun to say Snapdragon cockpit platform, minimising lags and making the whole thing genuinely seamless to use. So, that seat is in my driving position, and not quite, but I can almost straighten my legs, and I am wearing sort of platform driving shoes. That is absolutely bonkers, and I'm actually going to get Andy to come and sit in his driving position, and we can see just what a normal situation might look like. Andy is 6'3", he is in his driving position, and I have got a solid 30 to 40 centimetres, I would say, between my knees and the back of that car, the back of that seat. And that means that actually there is plenty of room for reclining these seats backwards. There is a full panoramic roof, and it's something that I didn't necessarily get to experience by sitting in the front, partly because I am sat so close to the wheel. But being sat back here, this is beautiful. This is genuinely beautiful and sensational, and even if you didn't have the amount of room that you have above your head, you would feel like you have the whole sky above you. That is such a lovely feature. Now, there are various other bits and pieces in here that I think, again, speak to the fact that this, in many markets, might be a car that's chauffeur-driven. You can control the heated seats, the temperature, the music. There are 2 USB-C cables in there. But importantly, if you don't want people fiddling around with the music from here, you can turn off that screen from that screen at the front over there. I really, really love this floating panel, and when you have the different lighting sort of settings on, all of these things illuminate in the right places, including a light bar across there as well. We've just returned to the hotel from what was truly an astonishing drive. I mean, the turning circle on this thing alone was breathtaking. But we started this episode by asking, does this warrant your attention? And I think the answer is, if you are in the market for a luxury EV, then yes, unequivocally yes. Because what else might you have in your basket at that sort of £60,000 mark? Well, maybe a Tesla Model Y, in which case you get so much more refinement, so much more consideration to the design. Or at the other end, you might be looking at a Porsche Macan, which is more expensive. And in that case, you get so much performance for less money. And given all of that, I think it's what it is good value luxury. Let us know what you think in the comments. Please do like and subscribe. And if you have been, thank you for watching.